100 days into the war on Iran, Trump fails to rally U.S. support. The unpopularity of the war may affect the U.S. approach to the conflict and hurt Republicans in the elections, analysts say. Saturday marks 100 days into the war that the United States and Israel launched against Iran. But as fighting and ceasefire negotiations continue to grind on, the conflict remains overwhelmingly unpopular among the U.S. public, making it a political liability for President Donald Trump and his Republican Party. Even before the war started, public opinion polls showed that most Americans opposed bombing Iran. When the fighting began, the numbers did not improve, with many U.S. voters perceiving the war as unnecessary and detrimental to the country. What's really clear is that few Americans think that this war with Iran serves American interests, said Shibley Telhami, a professor of peace and development at the University of Maryland, who has conducted polling on the war. The lack of public backing for the war is consequential, experts say, because it could weaken Trump politically at home. Democrats are hoping to regain control of Congress in the midterm elections in November, which could derail Trump's agenda for the rest of his presidency. A University of Maryland critical issues poll suggested on Thursday that only 16% of U.S. voters think the U.S. has won or is winning the war. The findings show that the U.S. public is not convinced by the president's repeated claims of victory. The survey also found that a majority of voters, including 33% of Republicans, say the war has had more negative than positive effects on U.S. interests. In comparison, only 12% of respondents, including 25% of Republicans, said the war's impact has been more positive than negative. Advertisement Telhami called the results stunning. This assessment, now that the war has become more detrimental to America's interests among Republicans, is a major turning point because it seems to hold for older as well as younger Republicans, and that I think spells trouble for Trump ahead, he told Al Jazeera. Persisting blockades. The U.S. and Israel started bombing Iran on February 28, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and several top officials as well as hundreds of civilians. Iran responded with missile and drone attacks against Israel and across the region. It also immediately shut down the Strait of Hormuz, a major shipping lane for energy products, sending oil and gas prices soaring. A truce was reached on April 6, but skirmishes have continued to break out in the Gulf, and the Iranian blockade in Hormuz has persisted. The U.S. has also imposed its own naval siege on Iranian ports. Despite frequent assertions by Trump that the two sides are close to a deal, there has been no major diplomatic breakthrough to end the state of no war, no peace. Since the ceasefire started, there has been no intense fighting, but that has not improved perceptions about the conflict in the U.S. It's just a very unpopular war, said Jonathan Geyer, a program director at the Institute for Global Affairs (IGA), which has done polling about the conflict. It's a little more popular among Republicans than Democrats, but still, there's a quotient of Republican dissent that's really interesting. An IGA poll last month showed 58% of respondents, including 21% of Republicans, disapprove of Trump's handling of the war. Only 24% said the conflict is making the U.S. more safe. While foreign policy rarely ranks near the top of voters' priorities, the closure of the Hormuz Strait is hitting Americans in their wallets and fueling inflation. Americans seem to be keenly aware of the link. The IGA survey suggested that 79% of voters, including a majority of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, say the war has affected the cost of living in the U.S. Telhami said the conflict is now an economic problem for the U.S., not just a foreign policy one, and that will play a major role in the midterms. It's a pocketbook issue now, he said. It's no longer just a foreign exercise. It's no longer just something that's taken place away from our shores. I don't care about the midterms. Trump has dismissed the economic fallout of the war, often pointing to recent stock market gains. Advertisement. He has also argued that economic hardships are a small price to pay for achieving his goals in Iran, namely, preventing the country from acquiring a nuclear weapon, which Tehran denies seeking. Last month, Trump suggested that domestic pressure does not play a role in his approach to the war. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. "I don't think about anybody," he said. "I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing that motivates me." He has also said that the November vote is not factoring into his Iran strategy. "I don't care about the midterms," he told reporters. But Telhami believes Trump is trying to project nonchalance about the domestic implications so that Iranians do not think he is desperate to end the war, which would weaken his negotiating position. He cares for a lot of reasons, one of which is legacy, particularly on economics, Telhami told Al Jazeera. He added that the war could turn into an economic disaster for the U.S., with oil prices going through the roof due to the blockades in the Gulf. That, in turn, could dent the Republican Party's chances at the ballot box. It's undoubtedly going to impact the midterm elections, and if the Republicans lose both the House and the Senate, then he's going to be in a terrible position, unable to implement things and perhaps facing impeachment, Telhami said. With Americans struggling financially, critics say Trump's dismissal of their woes may be hurting his case. The U.S. president also appears to be easily distracted. Posts on his Truth Social platform show interest in a range of subjects. One moment, he may post about the talks with Iran. In another, he might be attacking his opponents, criticizing the media, or stressing the need to build a White House ballroom. "We have a wartime president who isn't conducting himself with the seriousness of being a commander-in-chief," Geyer said. No build-up. Telhami also highlighted the short runway to the war. Before bombing Iran, the Trump administration did not speak to the U.S. public about the imminent need to attack, and it did not present the issue to Congress. If anything, the administration had been in the process of engaging in indirect negotiations over the future of Iran's nuclear program, with more talks planned at the time of the February 28 attack. "In every war, presidents usually prime the public," Telhami said. In this particular case, there was no attempt to build up to a justification for the war. By contrast, then-President George W. Bush and his aides spent months drumming up the supposed threat from Iraq before invading the country in 2003. That build-up included making a case for the war. Yes, it was a phony case, but they were making a case nonetheless. A lot of the public started believing it, Telhami said. The professor underscored that Trump has presented himself as a peace president, and he has vocally opposed past military involvements in the Middle East. Advertisement. Trump's anti-interventionist stance as a candidate may have helped get him elected. Polls have shown that the U.S. public had grown weary of war after decades of fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. For Geyer, that signals the unpopularity of the Iran war is not just about the economy. He said the conflict may sway voters because it is linked to other issues that Americans care about, like Washington's ties to Israel and the ballooning U.S. military budget, which is set to hit $1.5 trillion. The unpopularity of Israel, the unpopularity of the Iran war, the unpopularity of U.S. militarism, these have a lot of resonance and really seem to show that foreign policy is important to Americans, he told Al Jazeera.